No sniper on Earth could have made that shot, but someone did. Lyall Mercer pressed his eye to the scope and felt his stomach hollow out. Through the crosshairs, he could see the barrel of a Kalash 94 pinned to the temple of Nalia Vetrova, the investigative journalist who'd risked everything to expose a weapons laundering ring in the Arkala region. Her hair was soaked with sweat and concrete dust, her face streaked with blood from a split brow. But her eyes, they were steady, unflinching, just behind her. A cameraman lay crumpled against a support pillar, blood pooling beneath his head. The two had been ambushed while filming an off-the-record source. Now one was unconscious. The other was a pawn in a hostage broadcast. "Command, we've got 30 seconds. Maybe." Lyall whispered into his wash mic. Targets agitated, weapon pressed, no room for error. His spotter, Callan Bryce, crouched beside him, scrolling rapidly on his ballistic tablet. His face had gone pale despite the December cold. "Lyall, we're at 370 meters in shifting crosswinds," Callan muttered, voice tight. "We're getting gusts from the northwest 25 knots, shifting every 20 seconds. And that concrete barrier, it's blocking 80% of the shot." The target, Rurik Kaldin, a former Vorska Tier 1 operator turned mercenary warlord, stood just beneath a rusted loading bay overhang. The abandoned mine complex created a natural wind tunnel between the hills, warping any ballistic trajectory. "There's no angle," Lyall murmured. "Only his shoulder and part of his jaw show when he shouts. We miss by an inch, and we blow the op, even if the conditions were perfect," Callan said, wiping sweat from his brow. This would be like threading a needle in a hurricane, in Lyall's earpiece. Tactical Command's voice cut through Overwatch. "We need a solution. He's escalating. 2 minutes max before he starts executing." Lyall exhaled slowly. He'd taken the impossible shot before, made hits others called legend. But this wasn't that. This wasn't skill. This was asking physics to bend out of pity, and physics didn't pity. "Jake," he started, instinctively reverting to his old partner's name, then caught himself. "Callan, what if we wait? Let the wind stall." Even for a second, Callan shook his head. "Quietly, storm fronts rolling in. Conditions are degrading. I've run 6 projections. None of them end clean." Lyall adjusted the scope again, trying to find something, anything, but every potential path bent toward disaster. The geometry was brutal, the timing worse. "Command, be advised," he said, voice like gravel. "We do not have a clean shot." He hesitated, then forced the rest out. "Repeat, no shot available from this position." His words landed like stone in his throat. And yet, as Nalia looked upward past her captor, past the scaffold, something flickered in her expression. Not fear, but trust. Like she knew someone was watching, and that someone would take the shot. But Lyall Mercer already knew there weren't any. The building was boxed in on all sides, every window covered, every rooftop locked down. A ground assault meant body bags. The negotiator had been at it for over 3 hours, but Rurik Kaldin wasn't interested in survival. He wanted to make a statement loud, bloody, and final. This wasn't a hostage standoff. This was a funeral in slow motion. Through the glass of his scope, Lyall watched Kaldin scream about betrayal and broken systems, his voice cracking from the strain. He paced like a man teetering on the edge, jabbing his sidearm toward the lens of the broadcast drone hovering nearby. Then, he grabbed Nalia Vetrova by the collar. Lyall's jaw clenched as the mercenary yanked her forward, forcing her to kneel near the bay doors. Her head dipped, but she didn't scream. Instead, she stared upward beyond Kaldin, beyond the valley toward something only she could see. Maybe she'd accepted her fate. Or maybe she trusted someone would stop it. 30 seconds, Callan murmured beside him. His voice was barely audible over the howl of wind and distant helicopter rotors. Maybe less. He's winding up for it. I can read it in his stance. Lyall felt sweat bead at the back of his neck, despite the cold, beyond the ridgeline. News vans clustered like vultures, their long lenses locked on a building, where a journalist might die while some of the best snipers in the country stood frozen, helpless. Kaldin's hand tensed, the finger curled, trigger squeeze imminent. "Come on," Lyall whispered. "Give me something, anything." But the scope gave no angle, no line, only the suffocating certainty that someone was about to die and there was nothing he could do about it. Then crack. No, not a crack. More like a moment shattering. A bloom of red burst from Kaldin's head clean, surgical, and his body dropped like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The pistol clattered harmlessly to the concrete. Nalia flinched but didn't move for a moment. Silence reigned. "Lyall, was that you?" Command snapped through the earpiece. Callan spun toward him, voice sharp. "Did we take the shot? Tell me we took the shot." Lyall shook his head once. "No, that wasn't us." Static surged in his comms, followed by stunned silence. "Say again." Overwatch Command's voice, now a mix of disbelief and dread. "You're saying the target was neutralized, but not by your team." Lyall's reply came slow, heavy, affirmative. "We didn't fire, but Kaldin's dead." "What the hell just happened?" Callan gasped, spinning his scope across the grid in frantic arcs. "I didn't see muzzle flash, no sound, nothing." Kaldin lay motionless, blood spreading beneath him in widening arcs. A perfect headshot so precise it had to thread a 5-centimeter gap between overlapping concrete slabs. A shot that didn't exist. Lyall's hands trembled. One moment Kaldin was alive. The next, he wasn't. No thunderous recoil, no echo from a distant ridge. Just death. Delivered from nowhere. "Did you see anything?" Lyall asked sharply. "Any movement?" Flash echo. Callan shook his head. "I had the whole northeast sector on scan. There's nothing out there but that abandoned crane and some half-built scaffolding." Lyall's earpiece crackled as tactical command erupted in confused chatter. "Overwatch, report. What's your status?" Lyall swallowed, controlled his voice. "Target is down. Hostage secure. But we didn't fire. Repeat, we did not engage." Static, then disbelief. "Overwatch. Confirm last. You're saying the kill shot didn't come from your team?" "That's correct," Lyall said. He turned slowly, eyes narrowing toward the northeast, toward the crane, toward the impossible. "They ran the models again. Still zero. No firing position, no angle, no line of sight." Lyall stood over the digital map, lips pressed tight. The simulation showed every possible shot: rooftops, scaffolds, the abandoned crane, all dead ends. "Run it again." Someone said, "Maybe him, maybe not." Across the table, Callan Bryce stared at the projected trajectory. "There's no arc that makes sense. From the moment Kaldin grabbed the hostage to the second he dropped, no one had that shot." Lyall didn't respond. His gaze was fixed on the data, but his mind was elsewhere. "You saw it happen." "Mercer. So did I. He was alive. Then he wasn't. And nobody pulled the trigger." Sarah Talvek tapped the results. "We've accounted for bullet drop, drift, even terrain interference, every known variable, still nothing. The gap was only 5 centimeters, assuming anyone could time it." Callan muttered. Sarah shook her head. "Even then, only if they knew the moment before it happened." Silence fell. Lyall leaned forward, elbows on the table. His voice came low, quieter than the hum of the computers. "So what are we saying? That someone made the impossible?" "Look easy," Callan exhaled. "If they did. It wasn't instinct. It wasn't luck. It was surgical." No one spoke. On the screen, a red X marked the precise point Kaldin had fallen. Ezra Nolane, the physics advisor, finally spoke. "We're not saying the laws of ballistics failed," he said carefully. "We're saying someone operated beyond them." Lyall stared at him. Ezra added, They didn't break the rules. They ignored the ones we thought were absolute. A long pause. Then Lyall murmured, half to himself, 0%, and yet, here we are. The forensics team stood around Rurik Khaldin's body like mourners at a funeral, silent, grim, and visibly shaken. Their confusion deepened with every measurement. A recovered 12.7mm Lafay Magnum round sat delicately in a stainless steel tray, untouched except by tweezers. Even Sarah Talvek, the Bureau's lead ballistics expert, couldn't keep her hands from trembling as she held it up under the magnifying scope. The jacket's pristine, she muttered. Perfect symmetry. No deformation. Lyall Mercer stepped forward, still holding his rifle like it was tethering him to sanity. That bullet traveled over 200-300 meters, Sarah continued, her voice barely above a whisper, and punched cleanly through a human skull. But there's no trace of energy loss, no tumbling, no yaw. She tapped her tablet. A 3D trajectory overlay bloomed across the screen, highlighting the 5-centimeter gap it had threaded between two stacked concrete supports. But that's not the part that scares me, she added. The firing timestamp is 3 seconds before Khaldin stepped into the gap. Lyall froze. You're saying the shooter fired before the shot was possible? Ezra Nolane, the consulting physicist, stepped forward. His voice dropped lower. Not before. She fired at the exact moment, but not with any system we understand. Sarah nodded, still staring at the bullet. She didn't guess. She knew exactly when he'd expose himself. Not instinct, not computation. Something else, Ezra murmured. It's not marksmanship. It's a form of perception, like... She saw the whole moment before it unfolded. I've got more, Sarah added, gesturing toward a grainy black and white feed from a traffic camera positioned above the Khaldin Ridge construction site. At 15:47:23, the crane's cab distorts, not a muzzle flash, more like a shimmer. Heat haze. Then 3 seconds later, she paused the footage at 15:47:26. Khaldin's head vanished in a mist of red. Roll it again, Lyall said, stepping closer. They did, frame by frame. There was no shooter, no recoil, no movement, just one frame 1/30th of a second where reality warped. Then snapped back. Callan Bryce, silent until now, finally spoke. What if the shot wasn't fired from the cab? He pulled up a satellite map. Looked maintenance platforms along the crane's jib. Could have been anywhere up there. Sarah shook her head, already modeled every possibility. From any position on that crane. The barriers still blocked line of sight. The target was behind a ballistic shadow. The bullet shouldn't exist. Ezra broke the silence. I've accounted for gravity, wind, even the Coriolis effect, he said quietly. There is no viable trajectory from that site to the target, not unless the bullet passed through barriers in ways we don't understand. Lyall's jaw clenched. So what does that mean? Ezra exhaled slowly. It means this shot defies every ballistic model we've ever tested, not supernatural. Just outside our reach, Sarah added, softer now. She didn't break the laws of physics. She used a set of tools we haven't discovered yet, but the blood on the floor and the round in the tray said otherwise. Later that night, unable to shake the feeling, Lyall climbed the crane himself, safety harness clipped, rifle slung. He reached the cab, breath fogging the cracked window. From this angle, the concrete barrier completely obscured the place where Nalia had been held. No angle, no shot, no explanation. Then he saw it. A small folded piece of paper wedged between steel panels. He pulled it free. On it, in razor-clean handwriting, were coordinates 41.2609 95.68 W. No signature, no message, just location, 15 miles outside Khaldin Ridge. 2 hours later, the tactical team entered a derelict warehouse at that exact spot. They found a single spent casing, still faintly warm, and scorched into the concrete beside it, etched with surgical precision. were the words, "Some shots transcend distance, some justice transcends time." Somewhere out there was a shooter who could make bullets travel impossible distances, curve around concrete, and arrive at their target before the world even noticed they'd left the chamber. What haunted Lyall Mercer wasn't just who they were, but what kind of mind could calculate the moment before it happened, and whether that mind belonged to any unit he'd ever heard of. 3 weeks later, Lyall sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by the cold comfort of unsolved truths. The case file remained open, yet untouched. Pages scattered across his coffee table like shattered glass, every diagram, every measurement, every photo mocking the limits of known ballistics. He'd stopped sleeping every time he closed his eyes. The same images returned, bullets threading gaps no human eye could time, shadows moving with surgical calm through overlapping fields of fire. The official report, sanitized, sterilized. Unknown sniper eliminates threat from undetermined position, as if bureaucracy could explain precision that bordered on precognition. But Lyall knew, and it was eating him alive. His phone buzzed, a text, "Rooftop, now, bring the casing, come alone." He stared at it. The casing from the warehouse still sat on his desk unlogged, unreported. He told himself he'd kept it for the investigation. The truth, he kept it, because it felt like the only honest part of a lie no one was ready to tell. And now, someone wanted it back, against every instinct screaming, "Don't." He took his sidearm, slid the casing into his coat pocket, and climbed the stairwell to the roof. The wind carved across the skyline, and she was already there. She stood at the ledge, her back to him silhouetted against the pale wash of city light. Posture relaxed, but not careless, like someone who'd been in too many battles to need to prove anything anymore. Her voice, when it came, didn't try to impress. "You've been asking questions. Lyall Mercer." He froze. "You saw something you weren't meant to, but you didn't look away. That matters." His voice came out hoarse. "Who are you? How did you time that shot?" She turned, and her eyes held a calm that didn't belong to this world, not alien, just beyond. The shot wasn't impossible. It just didn't follow the kind of math you're used to. She stepped closer, no sound under her boots. "You're thinking about aim, range, trajectory." She paused. "I was thinking about consequence." Lyall frowned. Then how she reached under her coat and revealed the rifle. Not glowing, not alien, just different. Matte finish, no serial number, suppressed muzzle. Scope built like no optic he'd ever seen, no reticle. No lensing, just a shimmer, like it responded to intent more than light. Etched along the frame were numbers, not equations, but coordinates, ranges, timestamps. "It's not about the bullet," she said. "It's about knowing when the world opens just enough for the shot to pass through." "You're military?" Lyall asked, already knowing the answer. She gave a slight smile. "Used to be. But some missions don't make the record." She turned to the edge. "I didn't come to explain. I came because some things need to be remembered, not believed, just remembered." Lyall stepped forward. "Why Nalia? Why save her still facing the skyline?" She answered, "Because she still tells the truth, even when it gets her killed." And then she stepped off the rooftop. No flash, no scream, no body, just wind. Lyall remained there, silent, the casing warm in his pocket, and a truth colder than the air settling in his gut. There are rules to this world, but there are people, trained to find the cracks between them.